Respected President of the European Parliament, respected members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Galimbek Musin. I am addressing you from the Republic of Kazakhstan. I am making an open statement to inform you about the events surrounding the TengizChevrOil project in the Republic of Kazakhstan. As is well known in Kazakhstan, the investor operating under the flag of this project is Chevron, referred to hereafter as TengizChevrOil. TCO. The subject of my statement is as follows: corrupt contracts related to the plundering and embezzlement of the vast natural resources belonging to the people of Kazakhstan. Corruption schemes involving the laundering of large sums of money stolen from the pockets of Kazakhstani workers employed on the TengizChevrOil project through local Kazakhstani companies. Schemes involving the use of covert discrimination. Witnessing all this, it is impossible to remain silent. I will try to briefly outline the essence of the political case. On the TengizChevrOil project in the Republic of Kazakhstan, many Kazakhstani workers and companies face and fall victim to corrupt schemes involving American non-productive construction firms such as Bechtel, USA, and Enka, Turkey. I have no grievances against the citizens of the United States or the Turkish people. These countries are our fraternal nations and strategic partners. However, in Kazakhstan, on the TengizChevrOil project, certain business groups represented by Bechtel, USA, and Enka, Turkey, conduct themselves dishonestly and unethically. They created a joint company called TCO, whose shareholders are Bechtel and Enka. This company has been operating in Kazakhstan on the TengizChevrOil project for over 20 years. However, TCO is not an investor for our country. For 20 years, the company has disguised itself under the umbrella of TCO, pretending to be an investor, while in reality, it is merely a construction organization, widely perceived as a useless intermediary. The company TCO, in collaboration with TCO, has systematically deceived and embezzled large financial resources intended as wages for Kazakhstani workers. Thus, the company TCO on the TengizChevrOil project in the Republic of Kazakhstan has been involved in financial machinations, corruption schemes, financial crimes related to laundering and embezzling significant amounts of money from the pockets of Kazakhstani workers through local companies using schemes of covert discrimination. This concerns the massive financial resources illegally stolen by Bechtel and Enka from the pockets of Kazakh workers involved in the TengizChevrOil TCO project in the Republic of Kazakhstan. The consequences of these corruption schemes to embezzle significant funds from the pockets of ordinary Kazakh workers and to apply covert discrimination practices are dire. They often lead to conflicts, social tension, strikes, inequality, protests, unrest, and social injustice. Reliable information is available. The Master Contract Appendix, the rates and tariffs between TengizChevrOil and the companies Bechtel and Enka clearly state: 1. What the rates and tariffs for Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project are intended for. 2. The rates for Kazakh workers involved in the TCO project amount to $15 per hour. According to the terms of the contract, TCO makes payments to Bechtel and Enka, companies for Kazakh workers at a fixed rate, exceeding $15 per hour of work on the TCO project. The entire amount of $15 per hour of work on the TCO project is allocated to the maintenance and support of Kazakh workers, which includes salaries, all taxes, payment for accommodation, payment for meals, payment for training, payment for specialized clothing, payment for specialized work gear, payment for overtime hours, payment for holiday hours, payment for workers' vacations, final payments for workers, payment for transportation expenses, payment for workers' travel costs, payment for medical services and insurance, and many other expenses related to Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project. If we look at the rates column for Kazakh workers, they are already minimal compared to those of foreign nationals working on the TengizChevrOil project. TengizChevrOil has created favorable conditions for Bechtel and Enka, calculated all expenses, and yet Bechtel and Enka receive additional privileges from TCO. 1. Reimbursement for all expenses. 2nd, quarterly inflationary adjustments. 3rd, significant profits from exchange rate differences, as the contract between Bechtel, Enka, and TCO is denominated in US dollars, among other privileges. Unfortunately, The wages intended for Kazakh workers never reach the ordinary workers involved in the TengizChevrOil project. Thus, Bechtel and Enka quietly embezzled vast sums of money from the pockets of ordinary workers on the TCO project through corrupt schemes. Moreover, Bechtel and Enka had no right to earn or embezzle the wages intended for Kazakh workers. This is a formula for a fraudulent scheme and economic crime. Bechtel and Enka have billion-dollar contracts with Chevron for the construction of plants as part of the TCO project in Kazakhstan. Under the terms of the contract, TengizChevrOil makes payments in two ways. One based on a commercial lump sum agreement where Bechtel and Enka hold billion-dollar contracts with TCO for plant construction. Two, based on hourly rates. It is important to emphasize that this concerns the hourly rates for Kazakh workers involved in the TengizChevrOil project. These rates are exclusively intended to support and provide working conditions for ordinary Kazakh workers. For more than 20 years, Bechtel and Enka, through corrupt schemes, quietly laundered and embezzled the wages of Kazakh workers via Kazakh companies, employing covert discrimination practices. Further, enormous financial resources were embezzled from the pockets of Kazakh workers, quietly transferred abroad into offshore accounts through well-established schemes and combinations, constituting an economic crime. Additionally, enormous financial resources were embezzled from the pockets of Kazakh workers on the TCO project, paid out as exorbitant dividends to the shareholders of Bechtel and Enka. The actions of Bechtel and Enka constitute a particularly grave financial crime. As a result, for more than 20 years, Kazakh workers and companies on the TengizChevrOil TCO project have not received fair wages for their completed work. Moreover, the constitutional rights of ordinary citizens of our country were violated by the actions of TengizChevrOil and the companies Bechtel and Enka. Thus, the targeted use and allocation of enormous financial resources intended for Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project were disrupted. This was not merely a financial scam or fraud involving money laundering, but was also done with the deliberate intent of exploiting the labor of ordinary Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project, treating them as slaves to enrich themselves at the expense of the wealth of the Kazakh people. I particularly emphasize that the rates and wages of Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project are derived from the oil resources of the Kazakh people and are exclusively intended for Kazakh workers employed on the TCO project. According to the Constitution of the Republic of Kazakhstan, the owner of natural resources and mineral deposits is the people of Kazakhstan. Therefore, the rates for Kazakh workers on the TCO project are not determined by the pockets of Bechtel and Enka. The TengizChevrOil company allocates rates prices for Kazakh workers exceeding $15 per hour for work on the TengizChevrOil project. However, at the same time, Bechtel and Enka companies have unjustifiably reduced rates prices for Kazakh workers to $5 per hour. In doing so, the rights of many Kazakh companies and workers on the TengizChevrOil project are grossly violated. Therefore, Bechtel and Enka companies are also violating the terms of the contract, which clearly states that rates exceeding $15 per hour on the TengizChevrOil project are intended solely for Kazakh workers. In short, the allocated rates for Kazakh workers were supposed to be spent exclusively on the maintenance and working conditions of Kazakh workers employed on the TCO project. However, the company Bechtel and Enka used the huge financial resources allocated for Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project for their own selfish purposes and illegal enrichment. That is, the targeted use of these funds was violated. A margin of over $10 per hour of work on the TengizChevrOil project ended up in the pockets of those representing the interests of Bechtel and Enka in the Chevron USA office and the TCO Kazakhstan office. Thus, for more than 20 years, ordinary Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project have been turned into slaves of their own wealth. Moreover, TengizChevrOil has long since settled payments with Bechtel and Enka companies at rates exceeding $15 per hour. But Bechtel and Enka companies have set rates for Kazakh companies at only $5 per hour. At this $5 rate, all costs are placed on the shoulders of Kazakh companies, while TengizChevrOil compensates and reimburses all costs to Bechtel and Enka companies. The fair question arises, where is the $10 per hour margin for the work of Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project, which is generated from oil resources in the subsoil of the people of Kazakhstan? Why and for what reason do Bechtel and Enka companies not establish adequate rates and prices for Kazakh workers based on Kazakhstan's natural resources? Furthermore, for over 20 years, Bechtel and Enka companies, on a monthly and yearly basis, have laundered enormous financial resources through corrupt schemes and criminal means via Kazakh companies at the expense of ordinary workers of our country. This amounts to hundreds of millions of US dollars. Thus, a tremendous blow has been dealt to our country's economy. Our country has missed out on enormous financial revenues for the national budget. From publicly available sources, it is known that over the last 5 years of operations on the TengizChevrOil TCO project, the companies Bechtel and Enka have made an enormous fortune from Kazakhstan's natural resources, amounting to more than $1 billion US. I am firmly convinced a portion of the revenues and profits earned by Bechtel and Enka was effectively stolen from the pockets of ordinary Kazakh workers engaged in the TCO project through local Kazakh companies. Moreover, over 18,000 Kazakh workers were employed on the TCO project through Kazakh companies. Each Kazakh worker works 12 hours a day, 28 days a month. As a result, a net margin of $10 per hour of work is generated, leading to a net profit from each Kazakh worker on the TengizChevrOil project. Thus, for over 20 years, Bechtel and Enka have been receiving a net profit of over $2,000 per Kazakh worker monthly, without incurring any losses. A significant discrepancy in pay for equivalent work cannot be considered justified. Consequently, social tensions in society are growing. The intermediary margin exceeding $10 per hour of work and the net profit derived from Kazakh workers on the TCO project have caused discontent among ordinary citizens opposed to TCO. The greed and avarice of Bechtel and Enka have led to negative public sentiment toward TengizChevrOil. I want to emphasize that the managers of TengizChevrOil are allowing the misappropriation of our country's natural resources through various schemes and manipulations at the expense of ordinary Kazakh workers involved in the TCO project. Bechtel and Enka are amassing vast fortunes, earning enormous profits from building plants for the TengizChevrOil project in Kazakhstan. I am confident that Chevron and TCO managers are fully aware of all the corrupt schemes. It is evident that in collaboration with Chevron, the role of Bechtel and Enka has been that of a useless intermediary for TCO, serving only one purpose: to quietly siphon enormous financial resources from the pockets of ordinary Kazakh workers. TCO managers, in collusion with Bechtel and Enka, allowed the theft of significant oil resources from Kazakhstan. My grievances are not only against Bechtel and Enka, but also against those who allowed the misappropriation of enormous financial resources from the pockets of our country's ordinary citizens. Through the actions of Chevron, USA, and TengizChevrOil in Kazakhstan, an unjust society has been created. Moreover, I uncovered all the corruption schemes involving the companies Bechtel and Enka on the TengizChevrOil project in Kazakhstan. However, the law enforcement authorities of Kazakhstan, represented by the prosecutor's office, turned a blind eye to the criminal activities surrounding the TengizChevrOil project. The prosecutor's office of the Republic of Kazakhstan conducted an inspection of Bechtel and Enka, but the inspection was poorly executed. During the inspection by the prosecutor's office of Kazakhstan, not all arguments were considered. The main issues outlined in the statement were not addressed. No proper evaluation was given to all my arguments and explanations. The prosecutor's office of Kazakhstan simply ignored all the evidence and arguments during the investigation. As a result, the prosecutor's office failed to uncover the corruption schemes and criminal activities of Bechtel and Enka on the TCO project. The poor quality of the investigation by the prosecutor's office of Kazakhstan was due to the influence of high-ranking individuals from the U.S. diplomatic service in the Republic of Kazakhstan. These influential high-ranking individuals lobbied for the private business interests of Bechtel, USA, and Enka and Turkey in our country. In short, high-ranking individuals from the U.S. diplomatic service obstructed and prevented the exposure of corruption schemes involving Bechtel, USA, and Enka, Turkey, in Kazakhstan. From open sources, it was revealed that during the prosecutor's office investigation, former career diplomat and experienced negotiator Mr. Justin Ciborel urgently arrived in Kazakhstan on a private plane from the United States. After several meetings between Mr. Justin Ciborel, his colleagues from the U.S. diplomatic service in Kazakhstan, and members of the Kazakh government, the course of the investigation shifted rapidly in favor of Bechtel and Enka. As a result, the outcomes of the prosecutor's office investigation led to a decision in favor of Bechtel and Enka. It became evident to everyone that political pressure had influenced the investigation conducted by the prosecutor's office of Kazakhstan. Ultimately, a political decision was made in the interests of Bechtel and Enka. Through the actions of influential high-ranking individuals from the U.S. diplomatic service, Bechtel, USA, and Enka, Turkey, showcased their power in our country. Diplomatic officials from the United States and Kazakhstan became visibly involved in protecting the interests of Bechtel and Enka. Thus, they became participants and accomplices in corruption schemes, as well as schemes aimed at plundering and misappropriating vast financial resources derived from our country's natural resources. Lobbyists, corrupt officials, and patrons permit the following at the TengizChevrOil TCO project: corruption schemes, financial crimes, money laundering schemes involving large sums obtained through illegal means in Kazakhstan. Apparently, the patrons, high-ranking influential individuals from the U.S. diplomatic service, are unaware that the funds intended for Kazakh workers originate from the oil resources of our country, not from the pockets of Bechtel and Enka companies. The contract between TCO and Bechtel Enka clearly and explicitly outlines the purpose of the wage rates for Kazakh workers on the TCO project. As a result, the total volume of stolen funds embezzled from Kazakh workers amounts to hundreds of millions of US dollars. The beneficiaries of these stolen funds are ordinary citizens of Kazakhstan. Furthermore, Kazakh companies have supported Kazakh workers on the TCO project for more than 20 years out of their own pockets, while Bechtel and Enka, together with TCO, quietly plundered natural resources, converting them into large sums taken from our pockets. In my own case, significant financial resources were stolen by Bechtel and Enka on the TCO project in Kazakhstan from the pockets of ordinary Kazakh workers through corruption schemes and financial crime formulas. This situation should raise numerous questions for U.S. law enforcement agencies regarding the shareholders of Bechtel and Enka and the transparency of income and profit generation on the TengizChevrOil project in the Republic of Kazakhstan. I can confirm and substantiate the above with my reasoning and evidence. I have supporting documents in my possession. To reiterate, a portion of the significant income and profit obtained by Bechtel and Enka in the Republic of Kazakhstan was stolen through financial crime formulas and fraudulent schemes. I firmly believe that the statute of limitations for crimes committed in the territory of another country or state should not exist. I emphasize, the wage rates and salaries for Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project are derived from the oil resources belonging to the people of Kazakhstan and are intended solely for Kazakh workers. The company TengizChevrOil has the right to conduct a financial audit of the companies Bechtel and Enka for the targeted use and for the intended purpose of financial resources, wages for Kazakh workers on the TengizChevrOil project. I am not touching on another contract. The company TengizChevrOil has the legal right to demand from the companies Bechtel and Enka the return of the misappropriated significant financial resources, exceeding $10 per hour of work for every Kazakh worker on the TCO project. That is, underpaid and unreceived financial resources, wages for Kazakh workers on the TCO project. Since the wages of Kazakh workers were stolen from the pockets of ordinary citizens of our country by the companies Bechtel and Enka, but for some reason the managers of TengizChevrOil are in no hurry and have no desire to do so. It is obvious that there is a conflict of interest and lobbying of private business interests between Chevron, Bechtel, and Enka. According to our reliable sources, there are close ties between the shareholders of Bechtel and Enka and high-ranking Chevron managers in Houston. The sharp increase in profits received by Bechtel and Enka on the TengizChevrOil project in Kazakhstan leads me to think, are Chevron managers and Chevron itself involved in all these corruption schemes and criminal activities? We do not exclude the possibility of systematic bribery in the form of large fees paid by Bechtel and Enka shareholders to high-ranking Chevron officials. Dear members of the U.S. Congress, in our country, no one offends investors. The president of our country, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, creates all the necessary conditions for investors to develop the economy of our country. In our country, no one prohibits earning income and profits from Kazakhstan's oil resources. I firmly believe all my claims and demands addressed to Chevron, TCO, Bechtel, and Enka are legally justified. Moreover, Bechtel and Enka have always managed to resolve any complex issues by having vast financial resources at their disposal. In Kazakhstan society, many questions and claims have accumulated against TengizChevrOil. Why, for over 20 years, has Bechtel and Enka taken massive profits from the TCO project? By what means do Bechtel and Enka earn a net income of $100 million annually? I firmly believe that part of this income, amounting to billions of dollars, was stolen from the pockets of Kazakh citizens. These actions are a social injustice and a crime against the people of Kazakhstan. Chevron and TCO must be held accountable for their participation in corrupt schemes. Most likely, the managers of Chevron, TCO, and the companies Bechtel and Enka have closely studied the mentality of the Kazakh people, assuming that Kazakhs will agree to any rates and prices. I believe that the actions of Chevron, TCO, and Bechtel and Enka violate and infringe upon our constitutional rights to receive income and profit from the natural resources of our country. Unfortunately, the authors of the corruption schemes involving the embezzlement and plundering of Kazakhstan's natural resources have escaped responsibility, thanks to their patron, an influential, high-ranking official from the U.S. diplomatic service in Kazakhstan. I have informed the people of Kazakhstan about my case, conducted a series of interviews with independent journalists in Kazakhstan, published several articles in the media, and held a press conference at the Human Rights Bureau. In my current statement, I confirm that all my arguments and claims are fully substantiated. In conclusion, I want to state that I am ready to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies of the United States. I am prepared to provide more detailed information about what is happening around the TCO project in Kazakhstan. Regarding all arguments and claims concerning corruption schemes involving the laundering of vast financial resources from the pockets of ordinary Kazakh workers employed on the TCO project through Kazakh companies and schemes involving hidden discrimination, ready to provide all necessary information, all arguments, results of the investigation by the General Prosecutor's Office of Kazakhstan, the course of events, the development of events, demonstration of power by Bechtel and Enka in Kazakhstan through the hands of influential high-ranking individuals, information about the figures and patrons from the U.S. diplomatic service, lobbying of private business interests, infringement of the constitutional rights of ordinary citizens of Kazakhstan, conflict of interest between Chevron, TCO, and Bechtel and Enka, and much other useful information. I am addressing you with a statement. I urge the global community and the law enforcement authorities of Europe to pay attention. The Prosecutor's Office of the European Union, the agencies for combating corruption and organized crime in Europe, international human rights organizations. I am ready to cooperate with European law enforcement authorities to provide more detailed information for exposing corruption schemes related to the TengizChevrOil project in the Republic of Kazakhstan. I am also ready to collaborate with international organizations. In addition, I am willing to work with European journalists. For feedback, a mobile phone number, email, WhatsApp, and Signal will be provided.